Hello everyone, welcome back to Faith with Dummies, aka us. Hey Izzie.
Hi Rob, how are you this week?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. A bit tired, that's because our baby keeps waking up in the night. There you go. But yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, babies, who'd have them?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. I'm sleeping at the moment, which is nice. Like, I don't normally sleep very well, but I'm sleeping pretty well. So actually,
nice.
I have a funny dummy moment for you on the back of sleeping, which I'm going to tell you now. We went to a leaders weekend, like training weekend for camp this summer.
We did.
And I was sharing a room with 4 other girls, and 2 of them told me on the last morning that in my sleep, I was talking. I was trying to hit the wall because I was saying, I can't push the button. And I woke up at one point and just started clapping.
That's funny. I was there when they told you about that.
Yeah, it was very embarrassing.
Yeah. Oh, I found it funny. Very funny. Anyway, do you have any more dummy moments for us?
Yeah, I do actually. And they're both related to this podcast. Because firstly, today, Rob texted me about recording and he said he was going to be 10 minutes late. And I said, I completely forgot we were recording. Can we please try again in a couple of hours? And the second one is that when I was recording some of the interviews, Rob wasn't there. And I realized I was using the recording software for the first time. And I was a bit confused. And we use somebody else's podcast studio. And I started recording into their studio. So I'm really hoping that I deleted it properly, because otherwise a random recording of me talking to my friend is going to turn up in their podcast recording all about business. So there we go. Funny. Have you got any dummy moments this week, Rob?
I've kind of got a funny moment, really, because it kind of involves you at the same leaders weekend that you just spoke about. I remember me and my wife and both our kids were eating outside, and I took 2 high chairs outside. And they came in, and my wife was like, why don't you bring the high chairs in? It's like, oh, it's okay. One of our kind-natured friends, like Izzie, will just see it outside and we'll just bring it in. And what a coincidence. You were actually right there, and you heard me say that, didn't you? Yeah, and yes, so you very kindly brought the high chairs in for us, didn't you?
No, I did not.
No, wait, that's not right, is it? That's not what happened. You decided to spite me and not bring the high chairs in.
What Rob's trying to say is he didn't ask anyone to bring the high chairs in, and then he forgot to bring them in himself. So they spent the whole night outside.
It's true. And I don't have any kind-natured friends who are going to bring it in for us.
Clearly anymore. Not. Sorry about that.
That's funny. Anyway, on to the question that we're answering this week. Izzie, can you tell us more?
Yeah, so we wanted to answer the question about faith and feelings and how does Jesus impact our mental health? And we wanted to just talk about how we can deal with our feelings, like our real and honest feelings, not just where we say, oh, I'm fine, but how we deal with our feelings when we're also told to trust God and to just have faith.
Yeah, so we're talking about mental health and really talking about it, and hopefully we're going to do it well. We're going to do it justice. And just to say that obviously this episode is titled, so you know what it's about, but if this might be a bit of a trigger for you, like, please just proceed with a bit of caution and do feel free to turn us off if you think that's going to be helpful for you. But yeah, we're talking about mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, Rob, like, if you've ever heard somebody say something like mental health problems and faith don't go together, or if you're struggling with your mental health, then you just don't trust God enough. Have you ever heard things like that or felt things like that?
Yes, I have. Particularly that if you're struggling with mental health, then you aren't trusting God. And I think in the past that was a huge problem for Christians, and they would sometimes blame sin or lack of trust for their bad mental health. And I guess it's a common fear among Christian teenagers that if I'm depressed or anxious or anything else, then does that mean that I don't trust God enough? And I think another thing that I didn't really like what people said about mental health was that God wouldn't ever give you anything that you can't handle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're all like big questions. And I think a lot of teenagers and adults actually have those questions. I think most teenagers will go through some form of struggle with their mental health in some way, even if it's just a tiny bit of worry or anger or whatever. And I think Rob's kind of said it, but we wanted to make it clear that if you're struggling with your mental health, it doesn't mean you have a weak faith, and it doesn't mean that you don't trust God. And we wanted to say that straight away. Because if you switch off the episode now, that's what you need to hear. But I wanted to also share some examples of people in the Bible who went through hard times with their mental health in different ways, but were still examples of people of like real great faith.
Yeah,
So
that's really
you
cool.
probably,
Yeah, sorry, this is really cool. I think that we obviously, as we developed, we have words now to kind of talk about anxiety and despair and stuff. So actually going back and seeing what people from the Bible and how they felt and how we can put that together, that's going to be really cool. Yeah.
yeah, cool. So I had a look at a few different examples, and I think the one that everyone will expect us to go to, which I am going to go to, is David in the Psalms. If you've ever picked up a Bible or been taught anything about the Bible, you've probably heard about Psalms in the first few kind of times of reading the Bible. They're really easy bits of the Bible to read because they're a lot shorter. It's not like a whole story. You can just read specific verses or specific Psalms. But I wanted to just share a few that have been helpful to me or to other people in terms of different like feelings of bad mental health. So the first one is Psalm 42, which is really helpful to read if you're feeling sad or you're feeling like you're longing for something that isn't happening in your life. And I won't read the whole psalm, but David talks about being thirsty for God, wondering where he is, kind of wondering how he's gone from a place where he really loved God, he was really on fire for God, to actually being really sad and worried. And one of the best things I think about the Psalms, most of the Psalms, is that they'll talk about feeling sad or feeling angry or feeling worried, and then they bring it back to God. So a really good part of this psalm is where David says, why is my soul so downcast? Like, why am I feeling so sad and rubbish? But actually, I'm still going to choose to hope in God and to trust him and to praise him. So if you're feeling sad or low, that could be a really good psalm to go to. It's been really helpful for me, especially if you're feeling forgotten by God. Another psalm that's very helpful is Psalm 88. This is classically known as the psalm that nobody wants to preach on because it's like the darkest psalm. I don't know if you've ever tried preaching on it or writing a talk on it or like doing a Bible study. There's a reason people don't do it, because it's actually quite low and quite sad. It doesn't even end particularly well. It ends with, you have taken from me, my friends and neighbors. Darkness is my closest friend. And that's, I think, how it ends, which is we don't expect that from the Bible. We expect it to end with like, God's amazing and I'm going to trust him even when things are difficult. But that's not what the Psalms are about. The Psalms are about being honest. I think if you're really feeling low or like the world's against you or like you're grieving, it's okay to share that with God. David shared that with God in the Psalms. So I think that can be really helpful as well. And then there's Psalms like Psalm 55, which is really helpful for anxiety. If you're really worrying about things, it talks about casting your cares on the Lord and how he's going to sustain you. And it's very much about kind of like saying, I am going to trust in God, even though I'm scared, I'm going to trust him. Then Psalm 13, one of my favorite ones through my teenage years when I was really, really sad. I read this psalm a lot when I was younger. It's really great if you're feeling abandoned by God or feeling angry at God. It's really honest with God. It asks him a lot of questions and it kind of calls God to answer. It literally says, look at me and answer me. And I remember feeling like that. I remember feeling like God was so far away and he wouldn't answer me. So that was a really helpful psalm for me. And then Psalm 34 is, again, just really helpful for if you're feeling low, if you're feeling worried, talking about how God is close to those who have been brokenhearted, how he's with the people who are just feeling really crushed in their spirit. So, yeah, I think a psalm won't necessarily heal everything that's going on, but it could help you to see that it's okay to be a Christian and to feel like this. And actually, Psalms is a huge book in the Bible. And it's where David and other people, pour out their thoughts and their feelings to God. And they're not quiet about it. And they're not succinct about it. They're very, very honest and very open. And it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for that. I think someone that comes to mind is Job, someone who goes through a lot of loss. A long story, kind of another time, but it goes through a lot of loss and all the depression and feelings of great pain and suffering and loss that he would have felt would have been really like similar to what's been said above. And there was a time in my life when I was feeling particularly low, and obviously the Psalms have got that reputation for being kind of honest and whatnot. And so one of the things I did was I actually wrote a song and I called it Psalm 151, which, because there's 150 Psalms, and it was like my attempt at doing the next one, and nobody will ever hear it because it was awful. But I think it just helped with being able to express that and express my own feelings as well. And so
Yeah, I mean, I've done something like that before as well, like taken a psalm, written it down, and then like put it in my own words with my. So when David is like, "My enemies are fighting against me," I would write, "These people are being horrible to me," or something like that, which was really helpful.
yeah, that's a good activity. You should like become a youth leader and do that with some teenagers.
It's a great activity.
Yeah.
Another couple of stories from the Bible as well. You might have heard the joke that Elijah is the guy who is overwhelmed and he goes and takes a nap and it helps. And I think I've seen that kind of joked about a lot. Like, God prescribes us to have naps when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But within Elijah's story, there's this time where he's on this like huge spiritual high. And then I think the queen, I can't remember what her name is, wants to kill him basically. And he's suddenly feeling like really afraid. He's completely burned out. He's really depressed and he's suicidal. I mean, he says in chapter 19 of 1 Kings, he says, "I have had enough. I want to go. I want to die." And like, that's quite extreme. We don't always talk about feeling like that. And maybe, maybe you've never felt that extreme, but that's how he felt. And that's in the Bible. He doesn't want to keep going. He wants God to, be finished with him. And that's not how his story ends, but that's where he felt. And that's something that we are allowed to say to God. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. God used Elijah in amazing ways. So, it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah.
Again, there's also Jesus. We don't expect Jesus to be on this list of people who felt low and felt far from God. But when Jesus was on his way to the cross, he felt overwhelmed. He felt anxious. He felt sad. He felt like he didn't want to, we hear about him kind of asking like, is there any other way or anything like that? And I think that's really helpful. It's really helpful to know that even Jesus, who knew the plan and who was God, felt overwhelmed and felt anxious and felt sad. And I think sometimes we feel like we can't feel anything but joy as Christians, and it's just not true.
Yeah. So being a Christian doesn't mean that you won't struggle. It means that you don't struggle alone. Faith isn't about feeling good all the time, but choosing to trust God even when you're low or when you're doubting him.
Yeah, absolutely. Trusting God with your mental health is different from just pretending everything's fine. You're not a bad person, a bad Christian for having big feelings or for having difficult days. When you trust God, it can also mean asking for help. It can mean that God will put people in your life to help you. It means you can be honest with him when you talk to him. It might mean that you see a counselor, particularly maybe a Christian counselor. It might even mean that you're taking medication to help you. And all those things are perfectly fine. And it's all part of trusting God. They are things that he's given us to help us as well.
I agree. I've definitely had times when trusting God is hard, and that leads you to feel all these emotions and some of the ones that we've been talking about. And just like, there's been times in my life where I've been on antidepressants. There's been times in my life when I've seen counselors on like two like actual occasions, one because of a specific incident, but one because of like just feeling anxiety and depression. And this was years ago. And being able to have that someone to talk to. Counselor I saw was a Christian, so that really helped. And even though in the moment it's kind of hard to see some things that are like the good, God doesn't let me down. And I can say that having gone through it, that's just something quickly that I've experienced. But Izzie, do you have any times where you really had to trust God even though your mental health was bad?
Yeah. I mean, similar to you, like had times of real anxiety and depression and loneliness and even, some really awful stuff happening. And like you, I saw a counselor for a particular thing that had happened. And in that time, I remember being like, God, why has this happened? Why have you let this happen? Why aren't you protecting me? Am I not trusting you enough? Am I not a good enough Christian? Like, why has this thing happened to me? And really having to be honest with him and to tell him that I was angry with him and all that kind of stuff. And then accepting help from Christian counselors, accepting help from friends, and actually being able to be honest with my friends about those things.
Yeah, that's right. And God is big enough to take it. If you say, God, I'm annoyed or I'm frustrated or at you, like he's big enough, he can handle it. Yeah, so do that. So do that, especially if it's going to be helpful for you. So what are some practical things that we can do when we're struggling with our mental health and feeling like we're not a good Christian because of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said quite a lot of them, but I think talking to somebody that you trust, whether that is someone professional like a counsellor, or just someone in your life, maybe your youth leader, or somebody at church, or a parent, whoever it is that you can trust. Taking time to rest and look after yourself. Often when we're feeling quite low, particularly if you're feeling depressed or anxious, we don't look after ourselves very well. So learning how to do that. I think also, again, being honest with God in your prayer. And like Grace said a couple of episodes ago when we talked about loss, reading your Bible and understanding what it is that God has promised and who he is. I think if we don't read our Bible, we don't know that it's okay to be struggling, and we don't know where to go when we are. We don't know what words to use. And actually, if we read our Bible, we know that. So maybe look for some Psalms that kind of reflect how you feel and say them out loud, or like Rob said, write your own version of that, or write a song to God. And of course, if therapy or medication is something that you need, you don't need to feel ashamed of that, and you don't need to feel that that makes you any less of a Christian, because it really doesn't.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, especially as someone that's been on medication before and came off them, so that's great, and it helped for me in that time and that need. I think if you know me personally, and you are struggling, like, please do reach out for me. I will gladly take you for a cup of coffee. Like, please don't ever think that you were alone and have no one to talk to. Even if I can't say that I know exactly what you're going through, I can be a listening ear, and I can maybe say something that might help. If not, then that's okay, and it's just a problem shared as a problem halved, really. And if you need help, reach out. If you don't know us personally, like, find someone that you can talk to, find someone that you can share these things with, because people really care about you. God really cares about you. He loves you so much, and if we can help you understand that just a little bit more, then that's a blessing on our part that we get to play a part in that. But if you need to reach out, please reach out. Great. And so, Izzie, shall we set a challenge for our listeners this week?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you're really, really struggling, your challenge is to reach out to somebody to help you. Yeah. Like, please don't go away from this and just keep it to yourself. But if you're kind of in a place where you might struggle sometimes, or you're kind of in a on the edge kind of place, maybe just read through some of the Psalms. Find a few that reflect how you're feeling at the moment, whether you're feeling amazing and really full of joy and excitement, or whether you're feeling low in any sort of way. And just go through them and find some that you could keep in your pocket for when you're feeling like that again. And do what Rob did, maybe write your own Psalm. So pick a Psalm that reflects how you're feeling, and then put your own words into that Psalm, and pray that to God, or maybe sing it, or whatever it is that you want to do with that.
Great. Thanks, Izzie. Next week is our final week of season 2, and we're answering the question, worship, Sunday morning or a lifestyle?
Ooh, interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a pleasure so far. One more to do.
I can't believe the season's nearly over. That's crazy.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'll see you then.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye, Izzie. Bye, everyone. Wave it again.
Bye.
Bye.